and concessions made to move forward lowering costs and town property taxes. A balanced budget first is key. Be frugal as you would with your own money. My writing to you about this is not meant to deride the town or any official, as I appreciate the work you do. It is to spur you on as an elected town official and for the sake of highly taxed residents that must have relief and stable service for the long term. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you, Tucker Cronin. The town council president did say a few things to answer. I'll just leave it at that. I didn't agree with what she said. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any others before we move on to minutes?
Yes, last week I handed out this sheet, and I just wanted, per our process, to just go over it so people understand what it's showing. It's the chart reading Tiverton Library comparison among 48 Rhode Island library systems, fiscal year 2016. This is all data directly available from OLIS. Basically, I showed on the left-hand axis, vertical axis, I show the per capita amount of each category, and above the column is the ranking, and the second column for each category is the median. So as you can see here, the library's total expenditures per capita was 17th out of 48 in fiscal year 16. Employee cost per capita was 15th, which goes along with, if you skip a column, staff percent of operating expenditures was the 6th highest of all 48 library systems. And also our local contribution makes up the 12th highest percentage of the total budget. The column I skipped here, this is the per capita local revenue funding, so what we give to them. In this column, I've included the library. From the taxpayer's perspective, the bond, our part of the bond payment.
Which column?
I'm sorry, the very middle column, per capita local revenue, including local contribution for bond. I included the bond because from the taxpayer's point of view, I think that counts to what we fund our library. That would put us at 6th highest among all of them, but if you took out the bond, we would be 17th by that metric as well. At the bottom, I have a table that shows our actual expenditures, the library's actual expenditures in fiscal year 16 and local revenue. That's actual. The next number down is if we were 24th, which would be the median of the 48 library systems, what that would be if you took our per capita amount and made it a total budget. And you can see you've got a difference of, which I would consider overpaying, of $108,000 in expenditures and $91,000 in local revenue, which I'd note, given Jeff's earlier presentation, that would be roughly 2 FTEs. Now this is, it bears mentioning, this is off of the budget in fiscal year 16, so this doesn't even include the increase they wanted this year or the increase they're asking for next year. That would be over and above this. I'm happy to answer questions on this, but I wanted to make sure everybody saw it and understood what was presented.
Thank you, Justin. It's very clear.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Cass?
Just one. This presentation makes me concerned, again, that Tiverton is going to be spending more than any other town, and it's going to go spending, without even trying to reduce what we need to reduce. And then going back to the letter that Donna presented, which is going to be lots of more people than just that one person thinking the same. And I'm very concerned for the town.
Well, there are a lot of issues there. I don't think it's fair to put in the bond. The bond deals with the building of the library, which is a building that will last into perpetuity. Other libraries across the state aren't including the bond of their building. And we're not counting in our budgets the cost of buildings. So that needs to be extracted. It shouldn't be, it should be counted separately.
That's a fair point. I put that in there just for illustration of my point. I want to make
Yeah.
it clear, though, that.
Well, and
that- hold
it's a
on,
building,
let me
it's a
finish,
building
please.
that's
Let me-
going to
let me finish,
last
please.
for
I wanna
years.
make
The
it
last
clear,
one
though.
lasted for 80.
I understand it, but I want to make it clear
And
that
this one will be with us for
that
a long, long time.
that is only included in that single column. That, the bond payment has nothing to do with total operating expenditures data here, employee data, or the expenditures in local revenue that I break out into table. That's not included in any of that. It's only included in that single column there. So if you want to extract that, I'll lend you some
And
way
if you
out.
do it, we're 17th.
Right, even
So
if you take that out, we're 17
still
out
at
of
the, right at
48.
the,
So we're
I
still
mean,
well over
48,
that.
16, 48, we're right at that third way down type of thing. Thank you.
Well, anybody else have any other questions for Mr. Katz before I opine?
Can I opine?
You have,
Okay. The only thing I have to say is that we have to be cognizant that our senior population is growing. And it's growing. It was stated by Matt that it is, and when he was going with the senior center. And since that's happening, you have to understand, Social Security, they're getting nothing. They got nothing last year, and this year they got .03. I think it was $5. So you have to take that in consideration. They're being run out of town. So you
Well,
have to
that's
take
not
that-
true, because we're learning that more and more seniors are moving to Tiverton. So if they're moving to Tiverton, they're moving here because this is a beautiful place to live, and they like the things that are in this town.
Where do
don't
you
think
get
it
that
was-
statistic from?
I don't think it was clear that more seniors are
No.
moving. It may be that other families are leaving.
Or
and-
young people aren't coming in,
Right.
one or the other.
Right.
You're
I
you're
don't think he
pricing
made
young
that
people out, they can't afford to come.
Well,
I-
we've
I-
we've
That's
seen
anecdotal,
we've
too.
seen a surge in seniors
have-
with the Mount Hope Bay development.
Okay, I'm just
So
asking, asking that we have a letter from someone, it's just one person. A lot of people don't write. The other thing is that we do, everyone advocates for their budget, but we have to be fair to the taxpayer, and we have to advocate for the taxpayer as to what they can afford. I
Okay.
think
But
that
I also
we're
think
so high in our
one
taxes,
single
there's nowhere to go.
one single letter is not the letter for the whole town.
It's not,
This is a letter that is
There's been many. There's been many.
indicative of, this is one opinion, and
I think you're being a little dismissive of it. He's
I'm not being
saying-
dismissive. I'm saying this is one single side, and it's also important to hear the other side. So it would be worthwhile to, if you get a letter like this, to also bring along a letter that talks about the
but I
other
think
side
it's,
as well.
but I
But
think it's also
Jennifer-
important to remember, we've had 4 elections, and every year the taxpayers, voting taxpayers in town have said lower taxes.
And I'll just
Yeah.
quote the statistics. When it was a 0% increase to the levy, 66%, 2/3, 2-to-1 vote for a 0% levy. And when it was roughly 1% or slightly under 1%, it was a 60% vote. So if anything else, when the number got lower, more people voted. So
Okay.
it got stronger.
Well,
So
we-
I'm just
we
bolstering the point. We have one
we've
letter, but we
also
have
just
thousands of
seen-
voters.
We've also just
Okay.
seen our community vote for a bond to replace the roofs on our schools, which is a substantial cost, and it was
Overwhelming.
Overwhelming.
Yeah, it was.
We don't,
And
But I'm-
there's also a willingness to have a library open, and it's being used overwhelmingly.
Okay, but
I
I
agree.
would,
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead, Ruth.
I agree with what Jennifer says, but it's all a matter of degree and relativity to what can the taxpayer pay for that library, and what's happening with the schools, which is, we love the schools, but the fact
No,
is.
you don't. Sorry.
Yes, I do.
Pardon me,
Whoa,
I
whoa.
apologize.
I love them, but it's how you're managing it, because for 20 years now, apparently, people are now going to want to go to other schools, other than the public schools, and don't move here with children, so that 2 classes of students went downward. Your schools are good, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there's other things that just need to be done to keep people moving in, and high taxes kept your students from moving here. That's what I'm trying to say. And so
Well-
there's a whole problem,
What
it's a
I would-
circular problem.
Done?
Done.
The problem I have, I thought Mr. Cornyn had a couple interesting points. One where he talked about the fact that individual residents were important, perhaps more so than business and casinos. I think that's the first time I've seen that particular perspective. I'm not sure I agree with him, but it's the first time I've seen that perspective. Now, the other disconnect I have a disconnect in terms of the financial town referendum results, the bond for the school results, and then when I talk to people in town, and I say, well, if we want to lower the taxes, should we eliminate trash? Oh, no. Well, should we reduce the number of police officers? Oh, definitely no. And then the all-time favorite is, should we eliminate ambulance service in the town? There's nothing that says the town has to be in the rescue business. Many communities have private ambulance services. And if you pose that question to people, at least my small sample is, oh boy, they don't want anything to do with that. So I'm conflicted. They want all these services, but they don't want to pay the taxes. Well, that doesn't work.
That's right.
Unless we can find a whole bunch of really hardworking, well-educated, skilled people that want to come to Tiverton and work for nothing, we can't do that.
But I think, but to the credit of this committee, and, you know, part of our job is to be the sharp pencil and to try to find places to save money or weigh the value of the goods with the cost and taxes. And when it comes down to that, you know, we have had a lot of spirited debate here about, you know, about this staffing issue, and I mean, I will personally argue that's a place where I think we can sharpen the pencil. So we could, I mean, without reducing fire ambulance service, I mean, this is an area that we're looking at, that at least I'm looking at. Another thing that happens, and I'm going to use the word mismanagement again, but, you know, the town is on the hook, and they already paid out, but they're over 2 years to pay out $175,000 for firefighter mismanagement. And, you know, that's a fire department issue. I mean, frankly, I think it should come out of their budget, but $175,000 payment. So there are places, there are definitely other buckets that are problematic, and, you know, I think that there are areas that we can use our charter charge to try to sharpen the pencil. So I agree, a lot of this is fixed through contract, and the public has certain things they want, but there are definitely buckets and problems we can look at.
But, and the point is well taken. One of our public inputs, and I apologize, I don't remember the lady's name, but she made a point about, look, we spent $175,000 for this settlement, but we're cutting other areas.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a very
It's an important
point. But the fact of the matter is, what's done is done. And now our job is to figure out how we can go forward. So I think that the election results per se are conflicting. You know?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Do people that voted for that $15 million bond issue really understand what that's gonna cost them. It's $515,000 this year. And if you think that's bad, wait till next year. So.
Well, Cecil, a lot of people I talk to about that,
Yeah,
and when I asked them why they voted for, I voted for it, and I can tell you why I did. The roof will only get worse.
yeah.
The heating plant will only get worse. Every year we put it off, it's another $1 million. A lot of people realize that now. You know, it's gonna be pay me now or pay me later a lot more.
But I would.
But I understand what you're saying, you know.
Let me be the
They're telling us
devil's,
they don't wanna spend it, but they want all these
Well,
benefits.
let
If I
me be the devil's advocate for a moment, and I'll ask my colleague, Mrs. Black, not to fall off her chair when I throw this out, because I'm just, I'm just being a devil's advocate. So, why did we bother to fix the roof at the high school?
Right.
Why did we bother to fix the heating system? Why don't we shut the high school down
Yeah,
and
send
contract
send
the
kids
schools
to
out,
Portsmouth.
contract it out like Little Compton does?
Where are you gonna send them?
We used to
Portsmouth
have a
might do
system
it,
of that.
Bishop Spain might take them.
How many students did we have?
We sent the whole high school, we didn't have a high school, 65 it opened, 66 it opened. The schooling system, you had vouchers. You picked from 20 schools to go to.
Yeah.
There
Now,
aren't all those schools available. A lot of
Well,
those kids went into
if we
Fall
had the
River,
little
to the
Compton model,
Catholic
it would be a
schools.
wonderful thing,
Right.
but
yeah.
We don't have the.
But I just,
budget.
I
They
throw
should go to
that.
school in Fall River.
Yeah, you could go to, it didn't matter, you just picked a school.
you wanna go to school in Fall River?
Well, let's
depends-
say it was like a
depends which school.
$7,000 voucher.
Depends which school.
The private ones might be nice
Yeah.
to go.
Well, Diamond Vocational is a pretty
Well,
darn
Diamond
good.
is, but it's hard to
Yeah.
get into.
All right, but
Yes,
let's
it
not
is,
be out
virtually
there.
So-
impossible.
No, I wanted to, hold on, I wanted to mention, Mr. Chairman, you said, and this is a nit I have to pick with a lot of this conversation. You said you asked people, well, do you want to lose trash? Do you want to lose fire? Do you want to lose the ambulance? You didn't say, should we pay to be part of the cities and towns? Should we have the sixth highest percentage of employee pay in the library as a percentage of operating? I mean, those are the things that I think people want to trim, and I
If
think that's a
you-
fair thing. I just wanted to point out, while I have the microphone, that just a quick data point I think is relevant. I neglected to mention the chart that on my chart, the column that says we have the 17th highest total operating expenditures per capita. That's the first year of the full year of the new library. The prior year, we had the 26th total operating expenditures per capita. So we jumped up 9 spots when the first year the library opened. So these are the kinds of things, and if the library misrepresented to the public how much of an expansion it was going to be, the decision might have been different when the bond came, because it wasn't that big of a difference in the vote.
Is the point to close the library? Because if we don't fund the library adequately, we will lose it, and we will
No,
have to,
We still have the building.
Still have the,
Well,
still have the bond.
And
we'll have the,
bonds.
we won't get support from the state, and then we'll be
Well, I
responsible.
mean, you have to
for
realize the
whole
library
bond.
budget is more than the reimbursement, so it's a net cash flow positive if that were to happen. I mean.
So is that your intent?
No, that's not my intent, but if you want to make that point, let's make the point that it is a net cash flow, and not only that, but you can repurpose the building. I'm not advocating for that, but if you're going to
That's
go there.
what you're saying.
No, if you're going to go there and say that's the case, it is a net cash flow situation.
Yeah.
Well,
I didn't bring it up, you did, Jennifer.
Are the
the,
library employees unionized?
No,
No,
not
but
yet.
But every indicator from Jeff's calculations to looking at the expenditures suggests that it would be very easy for the library should be very easy for the library to get down from what it's spending now. Now, we run into maintenance of effort, but certainly not increasing it as much as it is. That's my point. It looks to me, from every bit of data I look at, I haven't seen a single one, aside from assertions of people invested in a library, that this increase is absolutely necessary, or they're going to have to close. I frankly do not believe it.
I don't either. I think it's a threat.
Well,
And that's
Well,
a
they
risk
closed on
you've got to
Saturdays
be,
for the summer, so.
that's a risk
was
you
a
have to be
reality.
willing to take. And I, for one, am not particularly keen to take that risk,
no.
because I don't want to be made an example of by the state.
And that
So,
would, Well,
The difficulty
Susan, can I ask you
comes,
this?
well, let me.
Would they, or would they panic that other towns might do it, and they would backfill to keep it open?
That's right. Well, I don't know about
Oh,
backfilling. They might very
They would
well
issue a
make it-
waiver of whatever regulation, silly, like we were complaining earlier about their standards. Well, what would happen, even if we broke the MOE, which I'm not advocating, but at this point, but even
Why
if we
would-
broke the
why-
MOE,
why
hold on, let me
even
finish the
talk
sentence,
about it?
please. Even if we broke the MOE, I just find it very difficult to believe that the state, that OLIS would not issue a waiver to say, okay, you can be open 49 hours or 48, if that's the sticking point that's going to cause a library to close, the jewel of Rhode Island, as they call it.
But Justin, to the point, when the analysis was done, would be done, okay, they would realize that they have 13 full-time, 12 and a half full-time equivalents, that they're meeting the requirement of 5, and even OLIS would scratch their head and say, what's going on? You can't stay open 50 hours, but you've got 12 and a half full-time equivalents, and you only need 5. Like, I gotta think, I mean, it doesn't take much to look at that argument and say there's something wrong. Why can't you stay open 50 hours, you know?
Do you
So,
want to count on that bureaucracy to make that connection?
well, I mean,
not the state of Rhode Island.
I'll go sit there and make the argument. I mean, it's not that complicated.
Make the argument, but that doesn't mean they're going to agree with it.
Well, if, that's fine. If that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do, I guess. But I'm saying, we're not talking something close here. We're talking like significant variances, 12 and a half versus 7. It's 2 to 1.
Let me ask a question. We all know about the 50 hours, and we all know about the maintenance of effort. So if it was possible to fire half of the library staff, and whatever that dollar amount would be, what's that do to the maintenance of effort number? Does it make it go away? Or does it still
The
exist?
staff
It still
is
exists.
like 7/8 of the library budget, the salaries. It's a
50%
huge,
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
it's
The
more than
maintenance of
that, it's
effort
more than
would
that.
not go away.
Right.
It would not go away.
I don't think it would go away.
No, it wouldn't. But we're not advocating they get rid of half the staff. So I understand your line of questioning, but it's purely a pedagogic question because no one's advocating that half the staff be
And
reduced.
we have no choice in that, because it's a
Not
line
really.
item, and they manage the funds they have.
Right, but they argued till the cows came home that they are not part of the town, that they're a separate entity, and we all agree that's a grant that they're given. So they took that position hard last summer.
I can only go by the fact that we get one number. So that makes them certainly unique within the town structure.
Sure.
I don't know where it puts them exactly, but it makes them unique.
I just want to say that whether it's the schools or the library or whoever it is, when they don't manage well and they don't maintain their buildings, they don't improve, and they don't save money, whether it's with people and volunteers and all the different things that they could be doing, it makes me, and I'm sure a lot of people in town, really wonder, do I want to give them any more money? That's what I'm going to say. And I just, you've got to manage well. In the private sector, some of these entities would be bankrupt, and that's a fact.
Well, in the private
These
sector, people
aren't
would
for-profit
also.
institutions. That's why they are public entities.
Yeah, in the
fact is that
private-
now-
It
now-
is
now-
not a for-profit
but-
entity.
and let me finish
It
my-
is a
yeah.
public school. It is a public
Right.
library.
I have you, I got you on that. But if they don't run it well,
It's
like
a
right now, what's happening in the
different
country
institution.
is going away from public
Oh,
schools
okay,
and to
let's-
charter and
let's-
voucher. So
let's get
that's
away-
what's,
Let's
Jennifer.
get away from the country.
Just
what I'm
as
saying.
directly,
No,
if I
it's
could-
here too, though, here too.
Okay.
People are going.
If I could just directly, just remind everybody pursuant to Mr. Edwards' point, the library, their threat isn't, we will have to close if we get the same amount. If we don't get the same amount. Their threat is if they even get the same amount. I mean, so we're not even talking about cutting staff. We're talking about restricting their budget from going up. At the same time that we've got a building inspector saying, I'm going to quit if I don't get $18,000 more.
And
So-
to show the inequity, I didn't dare say it with the woman here, but, I mean, we're sitting here with the building inspector making a strong case for a couple of part-timers to help him, and we had a director walk in tonight, and the salary increase from the old one was at $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. And I didn't bring it up, of course, with the person sitting here. But where's the connection? So I do agree, and so now, we need to find that $5,000 or $6,000. And again, we don't sign those contracts, but I do think that there are priority issues.
Yep, and I would like to go back and say that as to the point where, well, prior management hasn't maintained the buildings, et cetera, and the reason prior management hasn't maintained the buildings, et cetera, is because the voters wouldn't support the capital expenditure to do so. Going all the way back to the financial town meetings, what was the first thing cut? Maintenance.
'Cause nobody
Capital
sees it.
investment. And so, Mr. Katz made a good point. It eventually catches up with you. Pay me now, pay me later. I'm not sure it was Mr.
Jay
Katz or
said
Mr.
it.
Edwards. But it does catch up with you. And the roofs and the heating system, classic example. Pay me now, pay me later.
But they have no problem, okay, I shouldn't qualify, but there appears to be no problem with a 10% increase for a new director coming in, or it's 2% raise, 2% raise. There's no problem with giving labor raises, but we don't maintain the buildings and whatnot. So, I mean, and that's systemic, So, yeah, I mean,
That's-
contracts get signed, they put raises in them, so that, that's one of my pet peeves.
And that's-
To that point, with the contracts and pension agreements, there are things that they can do to make better agreements in those pension contracts. They do not have to do anything, okay? They do not have to do anything. And the other thing is that the maintenance of the buildings, the school buildings, I don't believe there's anything that says is there a law that it has to come out of the town property taxes. There's no law that says it can't be somewhat paid, but it can't help to be paid by the school budget. There's nothing
Yeah,
that prevents
okay.
them. Nothing.
But let's, our situation is that could there have been better contracts? Maybe. One of the things is that union members vote. Not a fact that's not overlooked by politicians, no surprise. But the fact is, here we are. Whether we like what's here or don't like it, doesn't have anything to do with anything. Here we are. And in a little bit over a month, we've got to have a budget, and we've got to move that budget from here to that office right over there in the corner, so we can start printing it and facing the process of going through to a vote.
Can we add comments about why we're recommending certain numbers at all, and so that people know? Or is that?
When we vote,
Yeah, when we vote.
Well, you can state things for the record, but I would argue against trying to put it into the docket,
Oh, no.
because we have enough trouble getting people to read the docket as it is.
when we vote, there will be discussion on the merits, if that's what you mean.
You know?
Thank you.
But, if you really start parsing it out, there is a relative few numbers that are large enough that you're gonna make a really big impact. And I know every penny counts. I'm very thrifty in my own household. I watch it. But when you come to the budget, there are relatively few things. And one of the cruxes is, are we willing to call the library's bluff? And I'm putting quotes around it because I don't want to insult anybody by saying it's a bluff. It was a statement that was made. So I
think
don't
that's
know.
a misstatement. It is not a bluff.
Okay, I don't know. The statement was made, so do we want to risk that? Let me rephrase and say, do we want to risk that event? I don't know. That's a judgment each of us has to make. I, for one, don't want to risk that judgment, because I've been.
Wait, you don't want to risk what judgment?
I don't want to risk closing the library down.
By
Okay.
giving maintenance of effort? you
Yeah.
mean?
I'm conflicted. I'll be very honest about that. I've told any number of people that I'm conflicted about the library situation. I am and remain so. But I don't want to lose the library because I think it does a lot of good, but I don't know. And what the state would do, I don't know. I've seen the state do some remarkable things in 14 years in government. And the one thing I do know about the state bureaucracies, this I know, they never forget. They never forget. And if you cross them, they remember. And it comes back sometimes in strange ways.
I think in this case, if that were to happen, they would feel crossed by the library because they would look at the staffing levels and scratch their head why they can't stay open 50 hours a week,
And they-
frankly. But that's my opinion.
And they very well might. I can't be a crystal ball. But
I don't think you have to be a crystal ball. I think you just have to
They
do
would look
numbers.
at the people doing the budget.
Yep.
Well, there is a balance, of course, everybody's talking about level funding. Well, it doesn't have to be level funding, and it doesn't have to be what they want either.
That's
There's a
right.
balance in it. But the only analogy I can make on all the rest of this, like Cecil was saying with the state, would you fail to pay your mortgage and tickle the bank just to see if they might foreclose?
But
I
we're not-
would.
Yes, it
But it
is.
is not the same.
It
No,
is
it
the
isn't.
same.
No, it isn't.
Yeah, it is.
Not the same.
When
It
you,
is
when you look
the
at the
same.
bond rating of our town, do you want to provoke that and see it reduced?
Why
I
is
mean,
it
I
gonna
don't
be
want any more
reduced?
debt, so it's okay with me.
The bond rating isn't going to affect
Oh.
us in a big way, it really isn't.
I think my final point on this would be that the budget,
We'll never get into
as you mentioned,
bonds.
Cecil, the union participation in politics makes it very difficult. The budget has proven to be the only remaining lever. And to your point, Mr. Edwards, about going against the bureaucracy, that's the last lever. And if we're looking for public sentiment, when people have a chance to vote directly for a capital expenditure, that's what they're going to get, they tend to do that. When they have a chance to vote for a lower budget, they tend to do that. And the message seems to me to be clear that you have to use this budget lever to force these issues so we're not being taken advantage of by a corrupted system and a bureaucracy that won't move. And I would take the bet that the OLS will issue a waiver even for reduction. Any day I would take that bet, but we're not even looking at that. And if the library can't stay open, then.
No, he is
We're
not.
not. Nobody here at this table is suggesting we go below MOE.
We're having
Nobody
this-
at this
we're
table
having
is
this
suggesting we go below
conversation.
MOE.
This
Who is suggesting it,
conversation,
Jen? Nobody is
if
suggesting
it
we're gonna go
wasn't on
below
the
MOE.
table, it wouldn't even be
Who is
discussed
suggesting we go
here.
below MOE? Nobody is suggesting that they get funded less than this year. Nobody. I haven't heard that from anybody.
You haven't.
No.
So don't say that, please.
We have not suggested that it go below MOE. Well, the only person that's talked about it is the library representative, which is his prerogative. That's their prerogative. They're advocating for their view. But I do think that this conversation is healthy because we do have a month, and pretty soon, when is it? 3/18, I think the final budgets have to be here. So between that I'll say 3/18, give or take, and April 5th or 6th, we've got to have the budget. And we can spend a lot of time. Counting the number of lines per page, number of pages, there's like 300 lines, 350 lines. So I'm not very keen about going over 350 lines of docket. So I think we have to focus in on what are the important things, what is pretty well given. We have, for example, I'll use a very safe one. The long-term debt service, that's a given. The only unknown there is what interest rate do you want to assume? Do you want to go with the treasurer's 4% guess? Why not? Her guess is as good as anybody else's because who knows till the bond is issued. So there's one that's pretty well rubber stamp, if you will, because the town of Tiverton is going to pay the debt service. And we can either pay it or we can go to court and lose and then pay all the lawyers and still pay the debt service. That's it. Now there's other things that there's room for discussion. But I think we do have to sort this out. Where are we really in the push? I don't know.
Cecil, is it true that if the town comes up with a number that may not be able to pay contract numbers, I'm not sure how I'm saying this, but I heard that actually people can go back and renegotiate those contracts.
What contracts are you talking about?
I don't, any negotiated contracts that they can actually, it's been done in Rhode Island, and I don't know the specifics, but I know that they actually can go back and renegotiate contracts, maybe Justin,
So
I don't know.
both sides of any agreement can go back and revise it.
Yeah.
It's,
So if
Yeah,
it's bad enough,
that-
I'm just.
It's not
Yeah.
unusual, but, can I say something? I was thinking that actually the high school could be town hall and police. And the kids have vouchers and go where they want.
Well, there will be no one to take care of us as we age.
Okay,
No, the state won't take care of us. All those children will depart, and they will,
The state will- okay.
if we don't take care of them, they will not take care of
So
us.
I think we should go through these minutes and knock them out.
can we do that next week?
I think what we ought to do with those minutes is we should all go home and read them.
Okay.
And then come back
Okay.
next week.
You make that motion.
So I'll make a motion that we bow waive the minutes, since I made the last motion to move into the, we push off the minutes till next week. And, okay,
We have a motion and a second to delay the minutes till next week. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? None? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
second.
Any discussion? All in favor?